So we're in this awkward spot right now. We're not sure if Sean Merriman's going to join us. If his schedule clears out, he might, but if not, we'll have to catch him on a different night. So we're going to talk some good old Vikings analysis. It feels like it's been a month since we did that with you guys because of all these sweet guests that Bryant keeps bringing on.
Right.
So we're going to go with some of the Viking stuff that we really haven't touched base on besides getting other players' takes. So, Ron, here's where I'm kind of at, and I don't know if this speaks for fans, but I have thrown in the towel on my expectations for this season. And it's not because I think the team is bad or stupid or any of this. I think it's just too late in the game to get on a big win streak and go forth. I think the same mistakes keep happening. And I really do think we're in the final weeks and perhaps month and a half of Mike Zimmer's tenure here. I've always enjoyed Mike Zimmer, and it's sad that I think it will end this way. But I'm not convinced. Like these last two games, if they would have grabbed one, they would have had my hopes up thinking, all right, we just need to find our footing. But there's something fundamentally missing about how this team executes in crunch time. And that's probably why the coach will be changed before too long. The most interesting thing to me right now is if Cousins will be on the chopping block and if Spielman is retained, because that is the straw that stirs the drink for this offseason, is whether or not Spielman will have a job with the Vikings. I think he's safe, but that's just a kind of a coin flip guess. So that's my little speech. Since the listeners haven't really heard from me, they've seen tweets and everything. What do you got, Ron, on your state of the Vikings?
Well, as far as the overall state, I don't want to necessarily look at it as too much glass half full, but the fact that there are 7 teams that get in and, that 7th seed isn't out of the question. Now it's frustrating to watch some of these games and to see, like you said, the same things happening over and over again, where seemingly us as fans can sit there on the sideline and watch. It seems like they're being handcuffed or, they're governed on a certain way, especially on offense. And they, I hate the whole go for the throat mentality in the sense, because sometimes playing to win isn't playing to lose, but they legitimately have been playing not to lose over the past few weeks. And I don't know what that is. They losing at Baltimore is a very good team. That there's no shame in that. Mm-hmm. Losing the way that you do when you have control over the game and you're up 14 points at 2 separate points in the game. That's problematic. And now the offense isn't only being impacted in itself that they're not being able to move the ball. They're impacting the defense, because now the defense goes out there and they played a hell of a game to start, but then they just got tired. They were constantly on the field. And, you've let Lamar Jackson and his ability to move. He had over 100 yards rushing, but it didn't seem like he just took over and was running on us like Michael Vick did in that one overtime game. He's going to get his yards. So that's the frustrating thing. So I've also been a Zimmer fan, but there's been too much of the same tune being playing this year, where we're in a lot of close games and we're losing these close games, but we shouldn't even be there. Like even in the Seahawks game where we won by 13, like they at least showed aggressiveness and then they stopped. But where is this aggressiveness? The whole part of the game. And that's the frustrating thing to watch, because there is a lot of talent on this team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So watching them kind of be limited, I do think that it's time for a change. Not in season, because I don't think there's an adequate replacement. But I'm all for, getting an offensive minded guy and, with the pieces he has, assuming that whether it's off the field stuff or on the field stuff, that everything is wrapped up, that let someone who knows how to handle offense, give them the reins.
Bryant at around 3-5 last year, because believe it or not, we had this exact same record at this time last year. You and I kind of talked amongst each other about whether or not Zimmer would be fired after last year. And I remember you specifically saying, like, he's never really had a bad year, has he? And I said, no, he always has mediocre years when he has bad ones. Well, now it appears we're probably going to have 2 mediocre years. Do you think it is time for him to probably go? Or do you think it'll happen?
I think it could possibly happen. I think people are starting to get a little antsy. What's crazy is I was in Columbia over the weekend and we actually watched the game. And somebody I was with was a big Ravens fan, and they were so disappointed the first half. I said, what's crazy is I said, I do a podcast for the Vikings. I said, and the Vikings seem to always have close games. I said, so it'll basically come down to the fourth quarter. I said, so because at halftime they were like out of it, like over it, and I was like, yeah. I said the Ravens will probably make some type of halftime adjustment because it didn't seem like Lamar Jackson was having a good game at all that day. But I just for some reason knew down to the fourth quarter it'll get somewhere around there where it's like, okay, here we go. And it did. It happened. He was like, you called that out. I said, we've been doing this podcast. I realized like the games been coming down to like the fourth quarter. Like they play teams super close and then get to the fourth quarter and they just don't know how to execute, like to find a way to win. And that's basically what happened again. And so he basically felt like if you called that out, it was like, I shouldn't have had called it out. That's basically what I kind of perceived because first quarter, second quarter, he was like out of it, like, oh, I'm sick of the team taking the jersey off, and the jersey on and all. And I was like, oh, no. Wait around.
Yeah. I said after the first half, I said, wow, this is refreshing to see another team come off the bye unprepared. Wow. But yeah, I definitely figured it out in the second half.
This one was so disgustingly predictable. Like I never felt safe at all at any point in the game. I was refreshed. I was refreshed. They didn't look like imbeciles out of the gate. But I never at one point thought, oh, baby, we're going to do this. I will say that when Barr stabbed an interception in overtime, my heart jumped thinking we're actually going to win this one because he went out of his way to make that circus pick. That my brain tricked me into that, but I never felt comfortable. And then
they got 1 yard after that.
Well,
3 and out with 1 yard.
How are you not like, is the offense not ready to go? Like you have 40 seconds and you have to call a timeout because they're not ready to go out on the field. Like it's, not taking shots at the 09 team, Brian, but the 12 men in the huddle after a timeout. Like how does something like that happen? Like that's
because somebody came in the huddle normally. It was a receiver. Normally somebody comes in the huddle and they have to call somebody out, but they just ran in. So that's poor awareness too. And then that's just not doing your job. You run in there, you call somebody, you say whatever position, whatever it is they used to say to let them know who was coming in. They let somebody know to leave.
Is that on the coaching staff to like let the people let the players know like, hey, this unit is out there at this point, or should the players
coming on the field? Players should know who to call for. They should know who they're replacing. So coming out to the huddle, running out there, you know who you're replacing, so you should be looking for them. Where are you going to stand in the huddle? Like everybody, too many people in the huddle, like. But certain people can't see that, like the line, just what I mean. But as far as skill position, you should know that you're coming in for somebody. If you see them there, why aren't you saying their name?
Sally, it feels like it's been like a month or so since we talked X's and O's about the Vikings. Right. And before you joined, I gave my little speech about how this sincerely feels like the final weeks and months of the Zimmer era. And I think the most interesting thing now, I don't think that they're capable of a big win streak. I probably did before the Cowboy game. I mean, I knew that was possible, but these last two losses have just convinced me that this ain't it and there's change coming. So now I think that the most crucial thing is whether or not Spielman goes with the dishwater, excuse me. And I'm just not sure on that one. So I wanted to get your state of the Vikings since we really haven't heard your take in about a month.
Well, first of all, just to touch on your point that you never really felt safe, I was at the game. So I want to make sure to point out that all of the Vikings fans that I was surrounded by and in the stadium were doing the skull chant until like midway through the third quarter. So I think any fan in Baltimore must be new here. Maybe they don't have DirecTV. They don't really know how things go. But that was pretty embarrassing. And didn't necessarily make anything easier for me on my walk of shame out of the stadium. But I don't know. To lose in this manner week after week, I was sitting there because like you, I never felt safe. And I'm thinking, all right, how are they going to blow this 14-point lead for the second time? All right, they just got a kickoff return. I mean, how do you lose a game when you're up 14 points twice? You have a kickoff return for a touchdown. You're up 2 in the turnover ratio. How on earth can you figure out a way to lose that? And I was sitting there thinking, I've said this whole season, I don't think Zimmer will go until the end. But I was sitting there thinking they might leave his ass in Baltimore. I don't know. I know that really wasn't going to happen, but it's disappointing. I agree with you. I don't really see a way out of this. especially with all the news we've had in the past 24 hours. It's still out there, how many people are going to test positive from this potential outbreak, in which there's 29 close contacts. It's already going to be an uphill battle in LA as it is, but if that ends up making an impact, I don't even know if they should bother showing up.
Yeah, it feels like the way that it's shaking down, towards his Zimmer's eventual exit, it has those 2005 vibes where everything is like, what the hell? Now what? Where, you look at that time, I don't know if we looked at our phones, we looked at the internet and we'd see like, now what did they do? Now what's going on? And the past 24 hours, it's like, I'm just looking at my phone waiting for the next fire. And in Zimmer's defense, I don't know that those two biggies over the last 24 hours have anything to do with him, but
definitely not.
They're certainly in the purple orbit. And now I guess we wait to see how those tests come back. And
do you go ahead.
Do you think that Spielman will be retained as a general manager? Because that really is that's such a hinge for the future.
So that's really interesting. I feel like most people believe that they are kind of connected at the hip. I don't necessarily believe that, just because Rick has been there for so much longer than Zimmer. Even when he wasn't officially the general manager, he was in the triangle of authority. And I think that it's been pretty apparent for at least the past several years that Zim and him don't necessarily see eye to eye on many of the roster decisions in general. And so I think that if there does come up, I can see that being a finger pointing game back and forth between the two of them. However, I do think if they do get a draft pick high enough, as it looks like is a possibility right now, are they going to trust Rick to make another major quarterback decision? Which if you have a high enough pick, you have to assume that would be a very real possibility of them drafting someone. So I think that's a major thing. And also, do they want him making another coaching decision? I think that they would be fine with him hiring another coach, because he did not hire Leslie Frazier and he did not hire Brad Childress, but he did hire Zimmer, and that was successful for the most part, other than the big, what you're going after, the trophy, but it wasn't a poor coaching decision by any means. But as far as them trusting him with a quarterback decision in the future, that's where I'm kind of unsure.
Well, here's what I think will happen, Sally. If indeed he remains safe and he, does the kill or be killed and he gets rid of Zimmer on Black Monday or whatever, I think he's just going to go find a coach that can win with this nucleus. I don't think he's going to strip it down, because he worked his ass off.
No, definitely not.
So I think it'll be Cousins extended for an extra year and then have it be a renewed 2-year trial, because and then, you'll still have Mond. You can even use that high pick on Spencer Rattler or Carson Strong or one of those dudes. But I just think I agree, but I think that would be a major missed opportunity if they end up with a draft pick high enough and they don't go quarterback when they haven't gotten a pick that high in so long. Yeah. Well, the elephant in the room is the $45 million cap hit from Kirk, because that you can only play him or ask somebody to take that. And that's the tricky part.
They would have to agree to restructure, essentially. No one's going to take it. Yeah.
And like to your point, Sally, with the assuming that they are picking at the top half of the draft, this isn't a quarterback dominant draft class from what they're saying. So in a lot of ways, I think that's a good thing, because look at this class. The top 3 picks are all quarterbacks. None of them really look, Trey Lance is sitting on the bench and has the time to develop, but none of them have really looked that good. And then Justin Fields, who everyone was clamoring for, he hasn't looked good. And then Mac Jones has looked the best out of all of them, and he's been, just Mac Jones. So it could be good that there's no real separation between these guys, because Dustin, I agree with you. I think you extend Kirk, bring that cap hit down, and then if you don't think Mond is the guy, I know Chartian was on a few weeks ago and he's not. So if Mond isn't the guy, then you take a shot at Malik Willis or whatever out of Liberty, or one of these guys who has the potential, the North Carolina kid I keep seeing. But then you let them sit behind Kirk, and you do have enough talent across the rest of the team where if Spielman is in charge and it's, hey, we're gonna, whether it is a Kyle Shanahan, if he gets let go, let's bring him and reunite him with Kirk, let this offense see what happens. And Shanahan, in a way, he's almost the anti-Zimmer because he's sometimes too aggressive to a fault. Go back to 28-3 when all you need to do is run the clock out, win the game, and you're putting the ball in Matt Ryan's hand, incomplete passes. You let Tom Brady come back and win the Super Bowl. So that might actually be refreshing. It's to have a guy who's willing to go for it on a 4th and 12 just because, like, why the hell not? So, but yeah, I agree with you, Sally. I don't think they're intertwined at the hip, but I think that, Spielman will be on a short leash, but you get the right person in place with the veteran team. And keep in mind, they are a very young team. They're one of the youngest teams in the league. So, the veterans that are aging aren't going anywhere. They're not getting rid of Thielen. They're not getting rid of Harrison. They just extended him. They're great players, don't get me wrong, but they're not the impact players of the Thielen and Smith that are the older guys on the team.
Yeah, what I hear from people that I trust is that the Wolves really love Spielman and they really respect him, and their eyes on the ground when they're not around. As we know, they don't live locally, and so I just don't believe that they're connected at the hip at all.
Who?
Zimmer and Rick.
Okay. See, I kind of thought they did. I didn't know that. Maybe that's because I thought it was a package deal that if the team was going to fumble or flounder, it was going to be Cousins driven. But here we are again. It really doesn't look like it's a Cousins only ordeal. So that's what kind of has had me drift back to the Spielman might be safe idea. Yeah, what about this? I want to ask you this, Sally. So what happens if we, first of all, don't even play this week because there's too much COVID, or we play and then we lose? And then we have the Packers at home and we lose and we're 3-7. I think that might be the in-season opportunity if they do want to fire him, that you'd be 3-7, just lost at home to your most hated rival. That I could see me driving back to Minneapolis, get the alert that he's Gandhi.
I don't know how likely it is. I mean, these are two games that when we looked at the schedule, we knew they were going to be tough anyway. I mean, the Rams looked pretty bad on Sunday night. I mean, they didn't look like themselves against Tennessee, but Tennessee is also very good. So I don't know. I think that's a tough
Rams
tough
or the
road
Chargers?
win. Oh my God. I'm skipping ahead to freaking December 26th here.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's all right.
That LA thing has been messing me up for weeks and months. Okay, well, that's embarrassing. All right, the Chargers. I've had that in my head all week, so never mind. I don't know about the Chargers, but Aaron Rodgers, I don't see them losing to at home. Okay, that was embarrassing. Can we edit that out? I swear to God, ever since I was watching the game last week on Sunday night, I'm like, oh yeah.
I think that stuff happens to all of us, so I wouldn't get too down on it. Bryant, hey Bryant, in 2005, could you feel that Tice was coming to an end as the coach?
Well, when I heard about the whole ticket thing, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a blast from the past. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about with that damn season. I forgot about. Oh yeah, that is right.
That's when I felt it. Because even 2005, I knew that Ziggy was upset about the boat thing, but we did kind of rally as a team and win 7 games after that. But then on top of that, the whole ticket situation where the player, who they said was Chris Hovan, told that he sold his ticket. So then on top of that, yeah, we knew he's leaving.
Okay.
Oh man, it sucks to see somebody getting penalized worse for selling their tickets than other things that have been going on.
To the Super Bowl, right? Like,
Jeez.
A lot of people, yeah.
Ron, were you hoodwinked too into thinking that when Barr got the interception that this was the real thing? Because Sally sounds like she wasn't convinced one iota.
Well, I thought it was a game-changing player.
Oh God, it was so good.
But then right away, all of that, excitement of, hey, here we go, was taken away because we had to take a goddamn timeout because our offense wasn't ready to go. And so right at that point, I knew they are not ready. Like, if you're not ready, anticipating that you're like, they were already in their mind that they lost, like that the Ravens were going to get it wasn't even that they were going to have Justin Tucker kick a field goal and we were going to have an opportunity. The fact that they weren't ready, they were like, they're going to score a touchdown, it's over, it doesn't matter. At least in my mind, that's the sense I got, because how the hell are you not ready? Hey, if we get a turnover here, we get the ball, let's go down and score. Because then at that point, you only need a field goal. So I think it went from game-changing play, which was phenomenal. It was the most athletic, I mean, it bars an athlete, obviously, but the athletic play I've seen him make in probably about 6 years. And again, we don't capitalize. So I don't get it at all. And I know there's been a lot, like I texted you and tweeted you about it yesterday, that first play, people like, they want to look at everything just in an image and think that that's what happens, but football is played in real speed. And when you look at it, if you pause it, like what I tweeted out, Dalvin had 15 yards open field. I'll take that any day of the week. And I don't think like Cousins made a check down play. He read the coverage, saw that the Ravens are baiting him into that. Now the play call's suspect because there should have been maybe someone else leaking out to the right side a little bit because there was no one, but that play, whatever. But the next play, to hand off on a run on a 2nd and long play, like they were doing all game long, that was just frustrating. And they weren't ready and they weren't prepared. So I don't know if that's on Kubiak, Zimmer. But to me, I blame the coaches, not the players in that situation.
Sally, walk us through your entire Virginia and Baltimore trip. I don't have a script tonight because we thought Sean was joining us.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's probably not, I just went, like everybody knows, I'm from Virginia. I went there to visit my family for a few days, and then we went up to Baltimore. My dad and my brother and my dad and I actually have not talked in 10 years. So as you can imagine, that was extremely stressful 3-hour drive in the car for me.
Y'all didn't talk in the car? Y'all didn't make up?
No, we talked in the car, obviously, and we talked like a little bit beforehand, but no, we haven't like talked about any of our issues or anything. But he offered to take me to the game, and so I didn't know how to necessarily say no, because obviously he was trying to do something that I enjoy. But the game was really fun. I mean, it was a little different than my normal routine, obviously. But I mean, yeah, it was really great there, besides the fans skull chanting.
You just knew that we were going to have to pay the piper? Is that why they got on your nerves? I
just don't like our fans when they get really surly towards other fans when we're at an away stadium. Okay. If you want to do that when it's like a guaranteed victory or it's looking more likely than not, then sure. But I just don't think, given the history of our franchise, that you should be getting, in other fan bases' face when you don't have a lot, to talk
unless
about.
It's Detroit or something.
Yeah,
no, leave Detroit alone.
I wouldn't dream of doing that. Like I'm going to go to the Niners game here in 3 weeks, and there's not a fiber of my being that's going to be an asshole and act like I'm all tough because I'm a Viking fan. I do the same thing around Packer fans who are like my friends or in real life. I don't talk shit. I know what's going to come back to me.
Right.
Like even when they got they've lost 4 consecutive NFC championships. Even when the one that kicked it off where they got absolutely snake bitten against the Seahawks in 2015, I texted my uncle who's a cheesehead and said, man, I've been there. I know that sucks, because I know that if I just start being rambunctious about how good the Vikings are, like what leg do I possibly have to stand on?
Right. Well, that's what I meant. Not to be, a jackass to other fans, but the only team that we can really stand on any legs against is Detroit. So that's what I meant with that comment.
And the Texans, we undefeated against the Texans.
I have much respect for Detroit fans. So much respect for them. I would never be rude to them coming here to watch their team. If they've put up with them and they've watched them and they're traveling and spending their hard-earned money to come see them in person in Minneapolis, I welcome them with open arms. Come have a beer with me. Like that's a tough life to live.
No,
and that
absolutely. And I'm not advocating to be a jackass to any fan base except for Eagles, Packers, and Saints fans. That's about it. All other fan bases, there's always the banter that's always fun and being clever and comedic about it. But never
Oh
being
yeah,
a jackass, but
I'm
to
all
be a
for it
jackass. So.
for fun or on Twitter or just my uncle text messaging me talking shit and all that. That's fine. That's fun. But like when you gloat about the Vikings doing something awesome, it's gonna come back later that
Yeah.
game to bite you. Not let alone
Yeah.
like you're gonna end up on the losing end of the season. It'll come
Wait
back
for the-
within
yeah.
minutes.
Wait for the clock to run out before you start getting up and skull chanting in a
Even then
visiting
look around
stadium.
for flags.
Yeah, that part's
Right.
bizarre. So a point of order, anybody that cares, they might be able to tell this on television, that at the Cowboys game, another disappointing affair, that was like having Packer fans there in terms of the noise. I've been to every single game except for 2 when my son was born in 2016 and at home. And that one was the first one that I looked around and I was like, this is really like a Packer fan crowd, that loud. And it's probably because they were winning for a lot of it and feeling good with a backup quarterback. But if they're allowed credit or they travel well or however they did it, it was very rambunctious on the behalf of Cowboy fans.
Well, it's like Sally,
Yeah.
I heard when on your other show talking about how there are Cowboys fans that have never been to Dallas. Like, I mean, that to me, like it's the epitome. It's like Yankees fans. Like,
Yep.
they're not just fan of a team that was good at one point, but yeah, like I noticed that too in watching it on TV that it seemed like a lot of Cowboys fans, and in my mind I was trying to think there's not that many like just Cowboys fans. Like, I mean, I know there's a lot of them, but Vikings fans don't just give up like primetime games to Cowboys fans. But I think a combination of
yeah,
it
they
being
do.
Halloween and the night game and like all of that, I think that all kind of culminated into there's no need to really go to the game. Coming off a bye, they haven't been playing well, and I don't know. So
There's way too many people that own season tickets in that stadium just to make a buck.
yeah.
There are so many people that have tickets that they never intend to sit in just to resell them. And it's frustrating because it's especially for Green Bay. I mean, almost every person that I know that has season tickets will sell them for the Green Bay game because it pays for their entire season tickets.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, so what do you even own them for? So you buy them and you don't even want to go to the Green Bay game ever.
Right.
Why bother? It's like you're not that big of a fan if you're going to let your stadium be 50-50 with your mortal enemy.
Yeah, I've never done that and I never will. But I've heard that and I thought it was more a theory. But if you say that happens, then
Oh yeah, I know
a lot of
several
people that do that.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Bears
Bryant,
and Packers, they go to the rest of them, or
Yeah, Bryant, tell us about Columbia.
Oh, my friend, he has a development company. We build like hotels and different properties. So he kind of had like a little party, basically saying he arrived. So everybody went out on Thursday. I had something to do Thursday and Friday, and so I went on Saturday and I came back on Monday.
I didn't get to see Shelly because she was on the complete opposite, different side of the field than me, and she did DM me and tell me to come see her at the players' buses after the game. But then she messaged me and said now it's like a private area.
Yeah,
Like they
don't
changed
allow
security.
that anymore.
So I didn't get to see her, but that was nice that she invited me to come over.
Oh yeah.
But she looked like she had a good time.
She did. She said she ran into some Viking fans too, who told her that they was like, "Oh my God, we really miss him. We haven't had a good O-line since he left." She was like, "Really?"
Yeah, they were correct.
Yeah, it's true. She said a lot of people, the staff and stuff, still knew her from the stadium.
Yeah.
Also,
they're still there. Like the hotel, she stayed at the team hotel too, so they still remember her too.
Oh, honestly, you guys, that stadium on the inside is so nice. The last time that I went was 2013 and it was snowing, so I didn't really get to like experience any of the stadium. But for as old as it is, it was so nice. And the lines, there was no lines for the restrooms, no lines for the concessions.
Really?
I don't know how they have it figured out, but US Bank is like really struggling.
I think I'm still waiting for a beer that I bought week 3.
Right. It was kind of, that was very surprising to me. Because like with the Bengals, which is an older stadium, I mean, that was a disaster.
When Raun came to the Lions game and sat by me, you'll have to fill in the gaps here, Raun, but his wife went to buy nachos on one of the lower floors. Were you guys exploring or something? And then you determined that the nachos on our floor were the same price, but they were all not as
well. So what happened when we were there for the first week,
Yeah, there you go.
home opener, we were on the club level. And so we had bought nachos, and, they were made, essentially right there on the spot, like whatever you wanted. They were great. Like, as far as stadium nachos go, they were what you expect. Then, so he went looking for food, and he was going for the nachos, and she was like, oh, I'll just get the nachos. I know they're good, but they were already pre-made. They were sitting out. They weren't like, it was all like just not very good. So she was very, unappetized by it. So I went before halftime to go. I was like, all right, I'll just find any line because I know it's going to be packed at halftime just to get food. And even that, it took, 25-30 minutes just to get pizza is what it ended up. So it was a mess. So
it's been really bad. And obviously, I know US Bank is experiencing staffing issues, as everywhere is in the country. And so, it's hard to knock them too bad, but it's been pretty unacceptable, honestly. I mean, I don't typically buy a lot during the games anyways, but even a bottle of water, like, how can you wait 20 minutes for a bottle of water? That's crazy. And you can't just give cash to the guy walking around anymore. It's all cards. So, yeah, they got to figure that out. I don't know.
Maybe they should take a page from Target Center and you order it on the app online, and then you get a text saying it's ready. Come pick it up. Like
that's exactly what they should do.
Maybe it's because it's 4 times the crowd just because it's Timberwolves game versus a Vikings game. But there's also a lot more vendors at US Bank Stadium. But if they did something like that, like, it's great. You just, hey, I want this. I'll pick it up at this spot, and they'll let me know when it's ready.
Well, and I'm not trying to dog on US Bank Stadium at all, but something that's really frustrating for me. So my godfather's tickets that he gives me are on the aisle, seats 1 and 2. So you would think in your mind, like, wow, that's great. 1 and 2, what a great seat. You don't have to like move down the aisle. However, because there's no ushers working, anymore. You used to have to like not only say where you were show your seat, but you also couldn't go down mid-play. They wouldn't let you come down. Now, because there's no ushers, people are walking down the stairs all of the time. And so it's blocking your view of the field when you have a aisle seat, and they're getting up the entire time. So it's like, you can't even see. It's just really messing up the game experience outside of just eating and drinking and using the restroom.
Do you just have to stand to combat that?
Well, no. So like their seats are 114, which, how on the corners it gets taller and you look down like at the middle sections. So because it's on that slope, if people are walking in front of you, they're like literally just right in front of you. You can't just like look to the side. So it just gets, but there used to be ushers up there. Like in the Twins games, you can't walk down mid pitch.
Yeah. I've noticed that. And I'm on 314. And so I've never really thought about the pros and cons of it. I always tried to understand why up there, why anybody really cared. But to what you're talking about, it makes a humongous deal if there's obstruction of view.
Yeah, it's almost like I'd rather sit in the dead center of the damn section because then I wouldn't be like getting up 100 times. But anyway, these are my first world problems, my privileged white girl problems. So
let's talk about Chargers a little bit.
Free tickets.
Let's assume that this slate of 29 COVID tests comes back and it's not too damning, and they do actually play football. I have firm belief that the game is going to go very similar to how the Baltimore game went. I don't think we'll get smoked. I don't think we'll smoke them. And these two teams, the way that they play, they're destined to have close games. Statistically, in the last 2 years, they have played the most games scored by 7 or fewer points. And you can't like script it any better because these are the two teams that keep it close. So I'm trying to find a way where I can be optimistic the Vikings will win, but I'm too scarred at this point with all of the undoings. Watching them lose to Cooper Rush was especially painful because like Sally predicted it. We went tailgating, my kids were there, and she just kind of looked over and said to me in the vicinity, like, we don't have a great track record about backup quarterbacks. And I think I snapped back something like, well, this is at home. This is a different story. But it didn't matter. It just was the same thing. Like, it didn't matter one iota that they were at home. It was the same cookie cutter Chase Daniel stuff that we've seen time and time again. So I'll find a way in my head personally where they do this, they can win, and I'll keep that to myself. But right now I'm just expecting a close loss. Am I wrong, Sally?
Well, as we said earlier, I've had the Rams in my head this whole time, so I can't really get specific on the Chargers right this second. But yeah, I think you're right. I don't see any way that you're not correct. There's been obviously a lot of distractions this week, but even outside of that, I just don't see it happening, unfortunately. But we can talk about Cam,
Bynum?
rookie.
Oh yeah.
Did we touch on him?
No, we're gonna talk about him
Bynum?
in Wangu and
Metellus,
Oh,
or
okay.
not Metellus, Willikis.
Oh, I thought you wanted to talk about
Yeah, sorry,
the penalty.
the penalty. Yeah.
Bryant, what do you think that there is a way for the Vikings to win in Los Angeles against the Chargers?
I mean, there's a way. They play well.
A realistic
But
way.
There you
it's like
go.
they have to play the whole 4 quarters. I feel like they're not playing 4 quarters of football.
They're not playing much of third either.
No, they played the first
and last.
Yep.
Possessions.
Yeah. Well, on offense, they play the first
Yeah.
and final possession for the most part.
Yeah.
And then in the defense, in the middle, they play pretty darn good defense. And then at the end, they're like, you know what? We're done. We're going to let the offense do it. And the defense collapses. And it's like, and then even when you have everything go kind of right, the kicker misses the field goal. So it's like, Raun,
Yeah.
give me a pathway to victory here, or is there not one?
It's like I mentioned too on Sunday. It's like the list of, if there was a Vikings bingo card, the randomness that would hit this year is just ridiculous. Like, Sally, you said not just winning the turnover battle by 2, we didn't turn the ball over. We got 2, didn't turn it over, returned to kick, and we lost. Like these type of things, the timeout, double timeouts in the Dallas game to get a delay of game penalty that I didn't even know was a thing.
Chris Webber.
Exactly. Getting a turnover and having to call a timeout. Like, I've never seen a team have to call a timeout because they're not ready to come out on the field. Like, the things that they're messing up on is ridiculous. And I think there's too much of that going on, where I don't see us ever running away from a team, because I don't think the coaching staff will let them run away from the team. Even if it's like the Lions at home, like they're just not they're gonna coast as much as they can. And I don't know what it is, but it's seemingly more and more commonplace this year than it ever has been. I don't know if it's the lack of faith in Kubiak, or just Zimmer, is really just losing touch and, disinterested. I don't know. There's just so many things. I don't see us keeping up with the Chargers. I think, Herbert's obviously, like, he's had a couple bad games, but overall he's a very good player. They have their offensive line's improved in front of them. They have the weapons. But then defensively, like with Derwin James being healthy and Bosa, like they have a lot of good players. I don't see us going in there, especially with all the drama that's unfolding with the COVID tests. And, it sounds like Dakota Dozier being hospitalized and all of this. There's a lot of other stuff outside of football that's hitting the team, as we kind of all foresaw at the beginning of the year. And it's just kind of a perfect storm. They keep saying the same things, that we got to do better, but let's see it. Like, stop reciting stats at your press conference, Zimmer, and like on what we're doing well.
Leave that to me.
Like you're trying to say, well, we're doing this well, but okay, well then let's talk about the things that you're not doing well. Not knowing when to call timeouts, not letting the offense take advantage of a 2-minute drill, or not going for 2, and your rationale being, well, they have a good kicker on the other sideline. Well, yeah, you're either going to lose by 2 or 3 at that point. So what the hell is that excuse? So
And he was on the
sound like coaching.
And that's, to me, that's where I'm pointing the finger right now. It's Brian, I don't know if you heard, like, so Zimmer was asked, like, why didn't he go for 2? Because in today's era is a lot more aggressiveness. Like, hey, you don't play for overtime. You play to either win it or lose it in regulation. And when we have the touchdown, he kicked the field goal, when it's like, you go for 2, like, you either get it or you don't. But his rationale is what pissed me off the most. He said, well, they have a great kicker on the other end, so I don't want them to go down and kick a field goal. Either way, you think the Ravens are putting a knee on the ball if it's a tie game? Oh, you know what, guys? We'll settle it in overtime. Like, there's a minute plus left. You have the best scrambling quarterback in football and the best kicker probably the best kicker ever. They're just gonna take a knee? No, they're going for it. So why not try to win it and at least make them? If you lose at that point, then on a field goal, again, losing to Baltimore in Baltimore is not a bad thing. But you have the opportunities and you don't take it.
They obviously didn't hook Zimmer up with a copy of the day's playbook, because the second I walked in and I saw Justin Tucker is on the cover of the week's playbook, I was like, well, here we go.
Salt in the wounds.
Yeah, and you're right. It's like, if you were at the top of the division and you didn't want to take that risk, then okay. But, you're kind of playing for not only, your maybe playoff spot, a wild card playoff spot, but you're playing for your job.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a risk. That overtime is not you don't do great in overtime typically either.
Right.
It's
and then you're leaving it to a coin toss
right. And then you get a miracle and you only have to get 3 points and you get 1 yard. But I didn't understand that either.
When I had a couple hours to process the Ravens loss, and then I started writing on Vikings territory, scribbling like I usually do, the very first sentence I wrote was, the Minnesota Vikings are a good football team that cannot consistently win games. And it's so strange that I typed that, because you could line up us going at Buffalo this week, at Tampa Bay, at the Rams, and I really wouldn't be like, oh boy, we're going to get steamrolled. I really think that we would punch them in the mouth, think around, try to find a win, and then maybe we would, but we'll probably lose. But then if you conversely said, oh, the Jaguars are coming to US Bank Stadium or the Texans are coming, I'd be like, oh, Jesus, what are we going to do to make that competitive? That's where I'm at. And none of that is an exaggeration. And there's no explanation. Like you should not fear these tiny teams. And then going to Los Angeles Rams or Chargers, I should be like rolling my eyes thinking, here comes a loss. But I know that they're good enough to win the games. And
so they're going to California 3 times still left in this season.
They do
oh
this.
My God.
Yep. Here, let me pull it up here. I wrote
I
about,
think to give you
that.
credit, you did mention that like before the season, like as part of your record prediction, when you said they go east then west and then.
Oh, I did. Like, I'm not normally a body clock gal.
I think so. I think you had mentioned it because that's where but
no,
well,
credit for either way.
Because it's LA.
No, wait. I got it.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah. No, this is okay. So, we went. So they kind of went Dallas, Baltimore. No big deal there. Baltimore to Los Angeles, Minneapolis, San Francisco, Detroit, then back home. That's where the madness stops.
And the back home is the Thursday game, right?
Yep. That'll be a Steelers team who is hungry as hell, that will look sloppy.
And they always travel well too. So.
Yep. And then, it's really, it's another thing that really is painful about these last 2 games is if you won one of these, we're sitting at 500 or 4-5 then it's really different, because after Green Bay, you have at San Francisco, who isn't mighty, but it's still on the road. Then Detroit, this diminished version of the Steelers, Chicago, the Rams, Green Bay, Chicago. Like it's stuff that if we were good and finishing teams off, it's actually pretty doable. But when you look at them through this lens, it's like, oh boy, this is probably going to be, if we're lucky, 7-10 based on the collapses that we have.
So Brian, I do have a question for you. Like, because obviously you played in Minnesota and then on the East Coast. So obviously going from East going West, which doesn't happen all the time, but is there really, like in today's era where travel, you're in these great planes or whatever, you're not in a sitting coach flying to Minnesota after being drafted. Like, is that a big deal as far as being ready and being mentally and physically prepared going to the West Coast or to the East Coast or having all these time changes? Or is that something that is overblown by us on a panel talking about it?
Sometimes you can feel like tired, a little jet lag sometimes going to the West Coast. Not going to the East Coast, but going to the West Coast, sometimes you kind of feel it. For some reason, I always just naturally feel it. Even not in season, going to the West Coast, that first day, I always feel it. But the West Coast, you find yourself up way early, like, you know what I mean? Because you didn't gain so many hours. So you actually feel like you can get a chance to sleep in. You're tired probably earlier. But no, by the time the game is played, it's normally going to be like a 4-something game on the East Coast, like 3-something game in the Midwest. So you should be okay. I feel like if anything, you got more rest once you got to the West Coast.
Does it like really throw your is the throwing of your routine off kind of more of an issue than the rest that you actually get? Because I know you guys are all creatures of habit. So if you get up at a certain time, have a certain meal, have like a nap or whatever, maybe get
if anything, you probably just woke up earlier out there, but you had a chance to lay back down too. You know what I mean? You fall on sleep early, so you probably will wake up earlier for an hour or two earlier, and then you realize you're up early. You can just lay back down, or you can start focusing, get ready for the game. However you're gonna do it.
Is it so as a kid, I remember watching, I lived in Houston, Texas for 3 years, and I watched a lot of Rockets game when they were winning championships. And I always remember when they went to play the Nuggets, they went to play the Jazz. They're always like, oh, how are these players going to acclimate to the altitude? Do you remember any of that in Denver where you feel it?
Oh, Denver, I do remember that. The breathing, it seemed like a little thinner, but I made it through it, but I remember seeing some running backs with the oxygen mask on. Like, you could, not even in the game, just being out there, just you feel yourself taking these deeper breaths, like, ooh, like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not familiar with it like that. You can feel the effects of it sometimes.
Okay. All right, Sally, why don't you give us closing arguments or final thoughts on this discussion or the Chargers or anything?
Well, we still didn't talk about Cam Bynum and his great
Oh
game.
yeah. I'm sorry. Yep. Let's talk about that.
Let's give him credit where credit's due.
Yeah. Another thing that I slipped into one of my writings is that arguably on that day, he was just as good, if not better than Hitman.
He did a great job.
He did. There was no drop off. And that was another thing that was squandered, is that moment.
Remember when this draft class was one of the worst in Vikings history?
After week 2, yep.
When everyone's ready to throw up arms, and that now Darisaw looks like the real deal, and then even all these other guys that are making contributions.
Where was he drafted? I don't remember.
Bynum?
Yeah. Was he a 4th or 3rd?
4th.
Okay.
Because Chaz was the 3rd. And he's like 24.
Well, they have three thirds, and Patrick Jones was the other 3rd, right?
We have, I think it was 4 thirds.
Did we have 4?
Yeah.
So then Bynum might have been that 4th third then.
No, it was
Surratt, Davis,
and Jones.
All I know is that kid was all over the field, making plays everywhere, and he only found out he was playing that morning. So
yeah.
Pretty impressive.
And then what about, I don't know how good your view was, Sally, or if you were back in your seat. What about when Nwangu took that kickback?
Yeah.
It was just sheer speed.
I was not in my seat. So
okay.
Big disappointment for me. I decided, I'm going to go to the bathroom at the very end of the half. So I went and I got out and I look up at the TV and it's 15 seconds have left from the quarter. And I'm like, why don't the Vikings have the ball? I had no idea. I've never done something like that before. Anyway, go ahead.
I think so. The people that listen to our show probably know about Nwangu's speed, but I don't know that the general public does. So when he took that kicker, when he's even back there, I knew at some point in the next 4 or 5 years during his rookie contract, he's going to do this once because he's so damn fast. He quite frankly has just right one notch below Tyreek Hill speed, and nobody really cares because he doesn't have a name for himself yet. So in his first chance, or I can't remember if it was first or second, boom, he did that, and then he converted the punt that looked doomed when it was snapped. I was like, oh, this will be bungled. Let's see. But no, that worked too. So all this stuff that we got away with, and it was all for nil. But
it makes no sense.
I hope that it probably won't be with Zimmer, but I hope that the next coach will use him in some very fun capacity, because since Patterson, we haven't had a certified speed demon.
That's why I thought I could go to the bathroom. I'm like, big whoop, I'll miss the kickoff. That's fine.
And one other thing, while we're touching on, the Bynum and Kane, and again, I still don't want to say his last name because I swear I can't. Tongue twister for me. But back to Spielman, and while Spielman gets a lot of people rip on him because, this draft class, it took him a while to do something, but look back a year and look at the players from last year's draft class who are making impact this year, even 2 years ago with Oli Udoh. But you look at Willikis coming in and looks like he is going to be a legit rotational player. Armand Watts, all these guys that he's drafted in the 3rd and later rounds, and they're coming in and they're not playing like 3rd third or passed round picks. So credit where credit's due on we have a lot of young guys who come in and are ready to play, while some of the first round picks may have been a little bit questionable, whether with Gladney and his off the field stuff or some other guys not living up to potential. But I mean, he's developed found and developed some of these young guys.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, Sally, now closing arguments or final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Well, I think you saw my tweet earlier because you retweeted it.
Oh, it was such a good tweet.
I never want anything like what has happened the past 24 hours to happen. It's extremely disheartening no matter what comes out, what the truth is, or if I'm sure we'll never actually know the full truth. I never want anything to happen like that, nor do I want any of the players on the team to be sick, despite their views on things. I just am so, I think if the season would have been going superb, I think our fan base would actually maybe start physically hurting people. So if there ever is a time for things to happen, I think it's when the whole season's already blowing up in front of our eyes.
Yeah, if that really, I mean, that's what I think I saw it like 20 seconds after you tweeted it. I was like, that is such a humongous point because, we're so embroiled in this as the obsessionists that if we were 6-2 and then it would be like the ultimate cynicism more so than we already had. Like, of course it's COVID. Of course it's all
right
stuff. And it would
then it's like, you don't want to make those off the field stuff about your fandom because it's so much bigger than that. Right. So it's like, but that our entire fan base, well, not entire, but a lot of them would be doing that. And I just think that they would be creating so many conflicts. People would be, I mean, there's already been way too many conflicts this year. Right. Like, and so I'm not thankful for anything, but
it would be a different animal, I could tell you that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Bryant, do you have any closing arguments about the Chargers or anything?
No, I just hopefully it's a good game that we finally can pull out. I'm tired of all these. One thing I'll say is it's always a good game. Like, it's never like a blowout.
Yeah.
But it's like it doesn't always end in our favor.
Yeah, no, they're always must-see TV. There is no joke there.
Well, going into the game, I'm like, okay, I don't expect this to be a win. All I want is a good game. All I want is it to be entertaining. That's all. And then I still leave there pissed off. So I guess I didn't really mean that.
We got to stop putting that in the atmosphere and saying we want to be entertaining and say we want to win. We want to win.
Yeah.
Like,
either get blown out or kick their ass. Don't quit doing this. Right. Meandering.
We want it to be like the 34-3 game against the Cowboys where piss them off because, hey, we're going to continue to run up the score.
Yeah. All right, Ron, give me your final closing arguments.
Well, geez, I don't have much. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to be a lot to look forward to on Sunday's game. Like, to your point, Dustin, I think we'll keep it close because we seem to be that team, like where we are a good team, but then there's something governing them that's not going to let them have free reign. And I think it's the coaching staff. And I think that's going to be the case the rest of the year, that it's going to be tough. But again, if there's any sort of optimism, there's 7 playoff teams now, and that 7th seed, we're a game behind. So if you want to look at it that way, I know we're not just living in the world of, well, let's just make it into the playoffs, but again, you make it in, anything can happen. Brian, you can attest to that with your Super Bowl run when you guys made it in, and then Joe Flacco went on a historic run and led you guys to the Super Bowl. So not saying that I expect that out of the Vikings, but I'm always until you're eliminated, just keep giving me meaningful games to watch in December and January.
I'm with you there on that part because, I would much rather see them get in a 7th seed and give me excitement for a playoff game than just beat crap. I'll never be a fan that's like, well, they might as well. I'm not going to watch it anymore. They might as well. That's just not how I'm built.
The tanking for a certain player, like, I was talking to it with a buddy the other day. It's like, what about that year when we had the 4th pick and we traded, or 3rd pick, we traded back 1 and Trent Richardson went 3 and Matt Cleo went 4. Yeah. Both of those guys lasted a total of 6 years in the league before they were both out. So just because you have a higher pick doesn't mean that you do anything with it. So
my closing argument is the fact that after this week on Sunday night, you'll be staring at Twitter, you'll be thinking about Vikings football, and half the games remaining will be against the Packers and the Bears. That's the way the schedule is built, so it'll start to feel a little bit more like normal in terms of what you're used to seeing. And if you do want the Vikings to reach that 7th seed, or maybe even the 6th seed, depending on how the Saints do, you're going to need to finish the season 6-3 or 7-2. 7-2 would get you probably to automatic entry, and 6-3 would get you iffy. But thankfully, if you still have that optimism, they have the tiebreakers over the Panthers and the Seahawks. Who'd have thunk it? Those are the things to hinge on. But I'm gonna leave everybody with the same little speech that I gave in the beginning, that I do believe these are the waning weeks and months of the Zimmer era. It's 7.5 years in the making. I think everything's coming to a head, whether it's off the field stuff and then losing on top of it. It really feels like the tea leaves are saying that it's coming to an end. But the most pivotal thing now between right now and then probably some random day in January is whether or not the general manager goes along with him. That will fundamentally determine the shape of Vikings football. If you're going to have just a reset with a different brand of leadership, or if you're going to throw Cousins out, throw Pittman out, and completely start over, because that's probably what would happen with a new general manager.
Do you guys want a new general manager? Just what is you guys' opinion? Just yes or no?
I would rather
wrapping up.
I would rather have a new coach to win with these guys, because I think the roster is very good.
So you want Rick still drafting and still signing the free agents? Okay.
Yep, that's where I'm at.
Ron, what do you think?
Same here. I think, it's if there's a change at coach, I think that changes a lot. But then even like I said, Spielman will be on a short leash after that.
I'm with no.
You want a new look?
I mean, it's not. How long has he been around now? What? It's got to be 14, 15 years, right?
2006 is when he came aboard from the Dolphins.
Yeah, we need a fresh.
I'm not
we just need a
surprised
fresh
at all
outlook. Fresh outlook of everything. And if I did find a shirt at my mother's house from 2013 that said "Fire Rick Spielman," so I've been on this train for a while.
Oh. All right, well, maybe you could start wearing that around Christmas, and you'll be good as new.
Well, there we go. That's festive.
All right, that's all we got for tonight. We'll be back next week, hopefully talking about.
We should ask Brian if he likes Rick Spielman.
I think he likes Rick.
Yeah, he's okay. I never had a.
He's okay. He called your mom on a cruise.
Yeah, he did.
And didn't he come into your dorm too?
Him and
Mafia.
Yeah.
Mafia.
See, I don't know about all that.
All right,
Guys,
guys.
are you gonna make it out to Minnesota for a Vikings game at some
It'll
point?
be in December. I picked the game in December. I gotta see which game it was again.
Pittsburgh.
Wow.
I think you said
I think
Pittsburgh.
it is Pittsburgh.
Thursday night.
All right, then that's a good game for me Thursday night.
All right.
Yeah, perfect. All right, guys.
All right, Skol Vikings.